stopping in and checking in on the bills that Disability Rights South Dakota is tracking on February 6, 2023, up at the legislative body at the South Dakota Capitol. You can see here all the bills that we've been tracking up to this date, the House bills, concurrent resolutions, and Senate bills. I want to let you know that some of these bills, some of this legislation, has moved through the legislature and now it's either been deferred to the 41st day and thus is dead in the legislature, or has been sent to the governor for signature. If these bills are under one of these conditions, this will be the last time that I'll be talking about them. In future videos, they will not be included as there will be no current updates to discuss. Let's get started. We'll start with House Bill 1010. This is to repeal the sunset date for provisions related to licensure of behavior analysts. This has made it all the way through the legislature and it's now been delivered to the governor for signature. This removes the sunset provision of the statute. If the governor signs the legislature, the affected session law, Section 28, Chapter 199 of the 2016 session laws, will remain in effect after July 1, 2024. The date previously set for that session law to sunset. House Bill 1034. Modified tax refunds for elderly persons and persons with a disability, to make appropriations therefore, and to declare an emergency. This bill creates a fund of $450,000 to provide refunds to elderly and disabled persons for real property tax and sales tax. It also increases income limits for eligibility to receive this funding. This bill has made it through both the House and Senate chambers, has been signed by the Speaker, and is waiting to go to the governor's desk. House Bill 1037. Amend the eligibility for admission to the state's Veterans Home and repeal residency requirement. This is just basically a language cleanup, but it does provide a preference to South Dakota residents for eligibility for admission to the state's Veterans Home, whereas before, residency in South Dakota was required. This legislation failed in Senate Military and Veterans Affairs. It was deferred to the 41st day. As you may remember, there are not 41 days in the South Dakota legislative calendar, and therefore, once deferred to the 31st day, it's no longer going to move through this process. House Bill 1044. Establish scholarships for individuals pursuing careers in the behavioral health field, to make an appropriation therefore, and to declare an emergency. This bill proposes to appropriate $5 million to Administrator Scholarship Fund, of $15 million to support students pursuing behavioral health careers and support professionals entering into the behavioral health field. This bill goes on to describe the administration of the scholarship as well as eligible fields of study. This bill continues on into the House Health and Human Services and has been referred as amended to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. You can see here that this bill has been hog-housed. That means that the bill maintains its original title, House Bill 1044, and that the bill is been changed significantly, though the title remains. House Bill 1046. To provide free tuition at the Board of Technical Education Institution for children of spouses of members of the South Dakota National Guard, disabled or deceased in the line of duty. The goal of this bill is that children under 25 whose parents sustained a permanent and total disability, or who have died serving with the South Dakota National Guard, or a spouse of a soldier wounded or killed in action such as described above, will be eligible for the free tuition to any South Dakota tech schools as has previously been the case for educational institutions under South Dakota Board of Regents. This bill has moved from the House, has moved over to the Senate, and is referred to Senate Education. House Bill 1052. Change the eligibility requirements of property tax relief program for disabled veterans and surviving spouses. This bill reduces the eligibility guidelines for tax relief programs available to disabled veterans and their spouses from permanently and totally disabled to at least 70% disabled. It also exempts portions of home value for property taxation. This bill was referred to the 41st day by House taxation. This bill is dead in the legislature. House Bill 1078, making an appropriation to the Department of Human Services for the development and expansion of adult day service programs and to declare an emergency. This bill would appropriate $5 million for grants to DHS for the development and expansion of adult day services that serve adults with dementia or symptoms of dementia. This bill has been referred to Health and Human Services. They then referred it to Joint Committee on Appropriations, where it was passed and will be heard in that committee. That bill has not yet been scheduled for hearing in a joint appropriations. House Bill 1079, make an appropriation to the Department of Health to provide grants to support mental health and suicide prevention programs and to declare an emergency. This bill would appropriate $4 million to the South Dakota Department of Health for grant programs directed toward youth and young adults that provide 1. Mental health and suicide prevention peer support training, 2. Community mental health and suicide data services, and 3. Suicide loss response planning and support services. This bill has been referred to House Health and Human Services. They referred it to Joint Committee on Appropriations, who will now hear the bill. House Bill 1086, create provisions for the psychiatric collaborative care model to be reimbursable for insurance. This would provide that insurance policies in South Dakota, except for those that are limited in scope, with coverage for mental health or substance abuse disorders, must reimburse for such benefits that are delivered through the psychiatric collaborative care model. This bill went to the House Commerce and Energy Committee, who then referred it to House Health and Human Services. It will be heard in that committee. Not yet scheduled. House Bill 1103, waive the fee for non-driver identification cards for individuals at or below the poverty level. This would provide for free IDs, not driver's licenses, for people at or below poverty level of household income. This bill was referred to the House Transportation Committee, where it was amended and heard. That amended form failed in that committee and was deferred to the 41st legislative day. House Bill 1128, revised provisions pertaining to absentee voting at nursing facilities, assisted living centers, or hospitals. Under South Dakota Codified Law 12-19-9.1, a county auditor must provide election services to any nursing facility, assisted living center, or hospital where 5 or more absentee applications might reasonably be expected to be received. The bill here eliminates the limitation that this statute only applies to general elections, and it removes the waiver of identification and affidavit requirements necessary in those locations in order for an individual to vote. House Bill 1138, require updated cost report information for certain community-based health and human service providers. This has been referred to House Committee on Appropriations and has not yet been scheduled for hearing. This bill requires that annual update of cost report information for community-based health and human services provider be submitted. The bill strikes language allowing DHS, or the Department of Human Services, and the Department of Social Services to conduct these updates upon their subjective assessment of need based on cost reports information or market conditions. So it requires annual reporting, whereas before it was this as-needed basis. House Bill 1167 annually adjusts the rate for community-based providers to 100% of methodology. This bill has been referred to the House Committee on Appropriations, not yet scheduled for hearing. This bill would state that community-based provider rates must be set at 100% of the methodology annually. House Bill 1174, revise civil commitment procedures for offenders with developmental disabilities. This bill has been referred to the House Judiciary Committee, where they passed this bill at 9 yeas and 4 nays. It will move on to the House floor for discussion. It defines criteria of immediate danger of physical injury to self and others. It defines the scope of offenses for which civil commitment can be sought after dismissal of the charge. House Bill 1195, continued enhanced and traditional rates for community services and support providers. This has been referred to the House Committee on Appropriations. This bill states that the Secretary of the Department of Human Services must continue fiscal year 2023 enhanced and transitional rates for community services providers and community support providers is defined in South Dakota Codified Law, Section 27B-1-17. The rates in this section must be annually adjusted for inflation. House Bill 1217, modify the requirements for eligibility to vote by absentee ballot, referred to House State Affairs. This bill defines circumstances one may vote by absentee ballot. These circumstances include, but are not limited to, permanent and total disability, illness, temporary physical disability. Absentee voting used to begin 46 days before the election. Under this proposed legislation, absentee voting begins 30 days before the election, except for overseas citizens and military personnel who can still start voting at that 46-day mark. This bill also eliminates the use of ballot drop boxes. House Bill 1218. Amend documentation requirements for emotional support animals in a rental dwelling unit. This was first referred to House Commerce and Energy and has not yet been scheduled for hearing. This is largely a language cleanup, but it limits supporting documentation for receiving an emotional support animal in a rental to having come from a healthcare provider that is licensed in this state. That means if you want to have an emotional support animal and you are a renter, your landlord may ask for supporting documentation. That supporting documentation must come from a healthcare provider licensed in South Dakota. It also adds that supporting documentation from online sources do not meet documentation requirements. This bill has been referred to House Commerce and Energy. House Bill 1240. Amend provisions addressing guardianships and conservatorships. This bill proposes to amend the South Dakota Codified Law regarding guardianships and conservatorships. It adds a section in which would require a report from a licensed psychiatrist to be submitted with the petition for guardianship or conservatorship if the subject of the petition contests that action. The legislation also adds that a POA may be nominated as a guardian or conservator nominee. That is somebody that holds a power of attorney for the individual may be nominated as a guardian or conservator. Finally, the bill amends certain reporting requirements of appointed guardians and conservators. House Concurrent Resolution 6002. Again, resolutions are that legislation that don't have binding authority, don't change the law. They're a statement or an encouragement by the legislature to do something or not do a certain thing, or to recognize an individual or a group for a particular accomplishment. HCR 6002 is to encourage the executive board of the legislature to continue researching childhood mental health and mental health services available to children in the state. This bill originated in the House Health and Human Services Committee. It was passed through that committee, sent over to the Senate, where it was there, went through uncontested, and has been removed from the consent calendar after that and referred back to the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, not yet scheduled for hearing. House Concurrent Resolution 6003, encouraging the Executive Board of the Legislature to authorize the interim legislative study of long-term care services for veterans regardless of disability ratings, and to develop long-term care plans for VA-operated, purchased, and subsidized long-term care services. This bill has also made it through the House and has been sent over to the Senate, where it has been referred to the Senate Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. Senate Bill 1, modified debilitating medical conditions for medical cannabis use. This bill defines qualifying medical conditions for medical cannabis use. So it sets out a specified list of conditions for which an individual could receive a medical cannabis card, and it also removes authority for the Department of Health to add conditions to that list, or also removes residents' ability to petition the Department of Health to add qualifying conditions. So it sets specific conditions that would qualify for medical cannabis treatment. Senate Bill 2, revise the Department of Corrections reporting requirements concerning abuse and neglect of individuals in private contracted facilities. This is largely a language cleanup. It defines the date by which the Secretary of the Department of Corrections shall provide a report to the Government Operations and Audit Committee, or GOAC as it's called. This report must be provided to GOAC no later than July 31st of each year. This bill has made it all the way through the legislature and has been signed by the governor. It is law. Senate Bill 4, modify a court's authority to commit a habitual juvenile offender to the Department of Corrections. This bill was originally sent to the Senate Judiciary Committee, where it was amended by that committee and then passed through the committee to the Senate floor. This bill modifies a statute that says the court may only commit a child to Department of Corrections if a judge finds that A, no viable alternative exists, B, the Department of Corrections is the least restrictive alternative, and one of the following. Then the statute goes through other conditions in which a child may be committed to the Department of Corrections. This bill adds language which states the child has previously adjudicated delinquent for separate delinquent acts arising out of separate and distinct criminal episodes 3 or more times within the preceding 6-month period. The amendment I talked about changed that preceding 6-month period to preceding 12-month period. So they're looking at a larger scope of time in which that child may have been previously adjudicated delinquent for separate acts. Senate Bill 6, authorize community response teams to recommend alternative community-based resources for children alleged to be delinquent and children alleged to be in need of supervision prior to adjudication. This bill adds a representative of public school district as a required member of a community response team that a court may seek recommendations for community-based interventions and rehabilitative services prior to disposition to the Department of Corrections. This bill was sent over to the Senate Judiciary Committee. They passed the bill. The Senate passed that bill uncontested on consent calendar and has now been sent over to the House Judiciary Committee. Senate Bill 7, clarify emergency commitments of severely mentally ill persons by appropriate regional facilities. This bill has made it effectively all the way through the South Dakota legislature. It adds appropriate regional facility as an alternative to a hospital for mental health holds. It's important to note that some areas of the state have neither of these options available, and county jails become the only available locations for mental health holds. Senate Bill 9, modify discharge notice procedures applicable to developmentally disabled persons. This bill states that if a parent or guardian voluntarily admitted an individual to the South Dakota Developmental Center, they no longer receive 10 days notice prior to that person's release. Instead, if the client or individual that is a resident of the center is to be either transferred or discharged, that facility must first have documentation in the client's record that the client was transferred or discharged for good cause, and provide a reasonable time to prepare the client and or his parents or guardian for the transfer or discharged, except for in emergencies. This is essentially a language cleanup so that our state statute matches federal law and rules. Senate Bill 10, expand certification options for interpreters for the deaf. This bill proposes to expand certification requirements for interpreters for the deaf. It would expand availability of qualified interpreters to the deaf community in South Dakota. And this legislation is supported by the Department of Human Services and groups from within South Dakota's deaf community. This bill originated in the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, where it sailed through the legislative process and has been passed by the South Dakota House of Representatives. It will be sent to the governor's desk for signature or veto. Senate Bill 37, revise provisions pertaining to the South Dakota School for the Deaf. This updates the statute to reflect a change from the South Dakota School for the Deaf to South Dakota Services for the Deaf. It's essentially a language cleanup when the school was redesignated as services. It also updates and expands background checks for certain positions at the South Dakota School for the Blind and Visually Impaired and for services for the deaf. This bill went through the Senate Education Committee, sailed right through the Senate, was sent over to the House Education Committee, and was passed there uncontested as well. It will move to the House floor on the consent calendar and will face that process before potentially going to the governor's desk. House Bill 64, repeal provisions related to the jail mental health screening pilot program and oversight council. This eliminates the jail mental health pilot program and oversight council reporting requirements. I spoke with Senator Duhamel on this bill, and she explained to me that the pilot program was instituted but was never really took off. The language cleanup returns these responsibilities back to the various county jails, which according to her are already doing this function. This bill was sent originally to the Senate Judiciary Committee, was amended, was sent to the Senate uncontested, placed on its consent calendar where it was passed, and is now sits with the House Judiciary Committee. Senate Bill 91 revised certain provisions regarding the crime of rape and provide a penalty therefor. This bill is being closely watched by the South Dakota Network Against Family Violence and Sexual Assault. It adds language to the statute defining rape to say a perpetrator of such an act must know or reasonably should know that a victim lacks the capacity to give consent to sexual activity. So whereas before, if that victim lacked capacity, that was enough for that person to have violated the law, now it states that they should have known or that they knew that they lacked capacity. This creates an enhanced burden of proof for the state to prosecute the crime of rape committed against a person of diminished mental or physical capacity. This bill has been scheduled for hearing with the Senate Judiciary Committee in room 413 on Tuesday, February 7th, first thing in the morning, 7:45 to 9:45 a.m. Senate Bill 161. Make an appropriation to the Office of the Secretary of State for voter roll maintenance, ballot machines, and election security. This is an appropriations bill which provides $313,107 to the South Dakota State's office for, among other things, ballot machines which may be used to facilitate accessibility to the voting process for people with disabilities. This bill was sent to the Senate State Affairs Committee, where it was scheduled for hearing. They referred this bill to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. It will be heard in that committee. Senate Bill 177. Provide for the study of developmentally disabled services and provide for appropriation therefor. This bill states that $1 shall be appropriated from the general fund for the purposes of completing a study of our state DD services to make sure that they are meeting all federal laws, regulations, and services relating to the care and treatment of individuals with developmental disabilities. Why is it $1? Because the intent is that at some point along the way, this bill will be amended to put in an amount that would support that study. This comes from Senator Jack Colbeck and Representative Duba, as well as Representative Van Heusen. There's been extensive talks at the South Dakota Legislature with Department of Human Services. Those legislators, as well as some others, Disability Rights South Dakota, about the status of DD programs in the state. And this is one thing that they're doing to try to look at how services can be made better. So that's the list of all the bills that Disability Rights South Dakota has been watching and continues to watch, the status of those bills. As I said before, not all of these bills will be discussed in future legislative updates. Anything that's been sent to the 41st day and is no longer being discussed at the South Dakota Legislature or has been sent to the governor for signature or veto have made it through the process. And so we'll continue to focus on the bills that are making their way through this legislative session. If you have any questions about anything I've covered here today or would like to discuss the process, how you can participate, or what this legislation this year may affect you, in what ways, please call Disability Rights South Dakota, and we'd be happy to talk with you. Have a great week, and looking forward to talking with you on our next episode.